Welcome to Classroom Confessions with Ms. Castillo. I'm your host, Cassandra Castillo. Today we walk the halls of Kendrick Middle School and interview some of our teachers on the best way they manage an inclusive classroom. So without further ado, let's get started.
As an administrator, I think it's very important that we have a good understanding of what the laws are pertaining to all students, and specifically with our special education students. We know that our special needs students have different learning abilities and different learning styles, and so we have that obligation to our students to make sure that we know what their rights are, that we protect those rights, and that we educate them according to what is specified in their ARD paperwork. Whenever we make decisions, we have to look at it on an individual basis and base those decisions on students' academic learning level, cognitive level, and behavioral function.
So my most recent role was a resource math teacher, and that is a special education setting that is the class right before they go into general education. So the way that that's different than say a general ed math class is that everything that we're teaching is modified, and in that setting you go off the students' IEPs, and we teach based on what their goals are and based on the curriculum. So our curriculum, we do expose all students to the grade level curriculum, but it might be at a lower level to meet their needs.
Well, I do a lot of close notes. We do Cornell notes. Some kids get highlighters. Some kids get vocabulary cards. Some kids get take-home study sheets. It all depends on what the IEP says and what I'm seeing around in the classroom. Some kids who don't have IEPs need things that can be found on an IEP. So you really have to get to know your student and know what will help them be successful.
Yes, I did have a student with autism, but he was a very high-performing autistic person. He was in my advanced class, and all I had to do for him was just to remind him to stay focused and help him organize himself. So I had a checklist that he had to follow just to make sure that he didn't forget the homework on his desk, that he was always prepared for whatever was going to come next.
To begin the first day of school, we set up policies and procedures. Every single day for like the first 2 weeks we practiced them. One of the major areas of concern that I had was lining up for dismissal. So I kind of created something called position 1 and position 2. And position 1 is where they stand up and tuck their chairs in. And position 2 is where they all create a line and they know exactly what spot to go to. Another thing that I do is for classroom management is I have done a little compliments chart. And so every time they receive a compliment, they get a sticker. And after 10 stickers, they get a reward, which is usually something of their choice. So it could be sweets, it could be a few minutes of game time on the computer. And so even if there's like a substitute, the substitute is, I ask them to choose the best class from all three, and then that class will get a sticker. And so if they're in the hallway, and that's a big initiative, and even me, when I'm in the classroom and they just did an exceptional job, they'll get a sticker for that. So it's just small little things, and setting expectations at the beginning of each lesson. So having them up and telling them exactly what I expect from them, and also having components of behavior in those expectations.
One of the things I like to do is when I'm setting up the seating charts, I start looking early kind of at the reading levels from last year, and I like to scatter them out where the students really don't know why they're sitting where they are, but I like to put some of the stronger readers with kind of the middle level readers with the low readers. So sometimes when we're doing group activities, it's just easier for me to pair them up pretty quickly, and then they can kind of pull them together. Also, what I find is when you're putting them together, if you're sitting them like that, a lot of times the stronger students will start pulling them and kind of encouraging them more. They also can help them. They can peer tutor them a lot easier. And so when I'm setting up my inclusive class, I scatter my kids out. That way when my co-teacher is going around, it's not like they're targeting this area. So all these kids, well all those are the slow kids and the kids that aren't very smart. So they don't feel targeted, so they're kind of spread out and they feel kind of part of what we are, a classroom family.
Educational success.
Okay, so yes, I've had to co-teach before. My first year teaching, I was the second assistant band director. The method they had was I taught woodwinds, so I was actually sent out of the classroom with a group of students, and the rest of the students stayed in the class with the other directors. I do feel it was effective splitting up like that because we were able to split woodwinds and brass, so I could give the woodwinds the instructions they needed while brass was able to get the instructions they needed since the instruments are so different. And then when we came together, we heard them all play together. So it was very beneficial for the students to be split up like that for coaching.
Okay, so I currently co-teach right now with another one of the Connect teachers. I think it's completely an effective strategy, and the way that we use it is his first year teaching reading. This is my 6th year teaching reading, and so I will go in there and together we will tackle a focus area. I think I find it most beneficial because you have 2 experienced teachers who are going through the material with the students, and then it also provides time for, I guess, one-on-one with the students. So while the other teacher is teaching the students and working with his students, I can walk around the room and check for understanding and monitor the students' work to see that they really are comprehending what's being taught. I also think it's really impactful for the students to hear the lesson from a different point of view. Of course, 2 different teachers have 2 different learning styles, and I think that it's important to have the students have that opportunity where they can learn the same exact material, but hearing it 2 different ways and seeing it being taught 2 different ways or using different strategies. That way you're meeting the needs of all the students in the classroom, all the different learning styles in the classroom.
I do encourage small group instruction, and that was actually something that it was initially scary for me because I've never seen it really done. They tell you to do it, but there's no videos showing you what it's supposed to look like in the classroom. So this year I have started, I've done data-driven small group instruction. So at the start of every lesson, when my kids come in, they take an online quiz. As soon as, it's a quick 5-question quiz over the topic of the day. As soon as they hit submit, the scores are sent immediately to my computer. So within the first 7 minutes of class, I already know which students need to be small grouped. I check my reports, and while they're moving on with their project or their lesson or independently reading, I will look at the data, pull that specific group of kids, and dependent on the question that they miss, and small group them and focus that instruction. Once I'm done small grouping them, I have a second quiz that they can retry. So now they're going to show me what they just learned, and they take a 3 to 4 question quiz over the same objective that they took the first one, and usually we'll see growth. It may not always be an 80 or 100, but it may have been a 40 at the beginning and raise up to a 60. So there's always some type of growth.
Yes, one of the ways that I accommodate to some of these needs is I'll pre-record myself on an office mix. For instance, if I have a group of students who need oral administration, I usually just go home the day before, record my voice, reading the questions, reading the answer choices, and I upload it to an office mix. I link it to their Schoology, and the students know how to access Schoology, and so they just click on their Schoology account, click on the link, and they're able to listen to me reading the question. I don't have to actually sit there next to them reading it while the others are still testing. This also helps with some of those students work faster, So they can move on to the next question. They don't have to wait for everybody to finish one question and then me reading the next question. They can move at their own pace, and they're also able to rewind it if they didn't understand it or they just didn't, a certain word didn't make sense. They can just rewind it and listen to it again. So that's one of the ways that I incorporate technology for those who have some kind of learning disability or need some kind of assistance.